a man who has everything: wealth, power, influence. He believes the world is his playground and that everything and everyone has a price. One night, in the dim glow of a lavish private auction, he makes an unimaginable purchase. A nun, a woman devoted to God, a symbol of purity and faith. And he pays $5 million to own her. The room is silent as the deal is made. The nun, her hands trembling, is escorted toward him. She does not scream. She does not fight. But her eyes burn with something the man cannot quite understand. For him, this is nothing more than a transaction, another conquest, another display of his limitless power. He smirks, amused at her silent defiance, believing she will eventually surrender. After all, money always wins. That night, in the cold, vast chamber of his mansion, he walks toward her, the heavy doors shut behind them. The air is thick with tension. She kneels not in fear, but in prayer. He scoffs. Prayers won't save you now. But then she speaks. Her voice is calm, unwavering. And in just a few words, she does something no one has ever done before. She breaks him, the ruthless millionaire, the man who has crushed lives without remorse, falls to his knees. His chest tightens, his breath grows shallow, his eyes well with tears. What did she say? How did she, a powerless nun, bring a billionaire to his knees? What happens next will change everything. Stay with us, because this story is far from over. The room is silent except for the flickering of candlelight. The billionaire, a man who has crushed his rivals and bought his way through life, is now on his knees. His breath is ragged, his hands clenched into fists. For the first time, he feels powerless. The nun watches him with steady eyes, unshaken by his wealth or his presence. She is not afraid. "You think you own me," she finally says, her voice calm, almost sorrowful. "But you have purchased only my body, not my soul." Her words cut deeper than any insult ever thrown at him. How dare she? No one speaks to him this way. No one. He could destroy her with a single command, yet something in her presence unsettles him. He forces a smirk. "Everyone has a price, even you." She tilts her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Then tell me, billionaire, if your money can buy anything, why do you still feel empty?" His heart stops for a moment. He has spent years building an empire, drowning in luxury, surrounded by power. But in this moment, facing a woman with nothing but faith, he feels stripped bare, exposed. His mind screams at him to fight back, to show dominance. But something inside him hesitates. "Silence?" she says softly. "You know I speak the truth." Anger flares within him. He won't be humiliated by a nun. He won't be made to feel weak. With a forced chuckle, he steps closer, towering over her. "You're brave," he says, "but bravery won't save you." She doesn't move, doesn't even blink. "I do not need saving," she whispers. "But you do." His breath catches. For a moment he sees himself through her eyes, not as a king, not as a ruler of wealth, but as a man lost in the darkness. He steps back. His hands are shaking. Who is she? Why does he suddenly feel like she holds more power than he ever could? And for the first time in his life, he isn't sure what happens next. The billionaire clenches his jaw, his pulse hammering in his ears. How is this happening? He has commanded presidents, silenced critics, and crushed empires. Yet here he stands, shaken by the quiet defiance of a woman who owns nothing. "You think faith makes you powerful?" His voice is sharp, a blade meant to cut through her conviction. "Faith is for the weak. It's an illusion, a fairy tale for people who can't control their own fate." The nun's eyes soften as if she pities him. That look, it enrages him. "If faith is an illusion," she says, "then why are you afraid?" His fists tighten. I am not afraid. Her lips curve into a knowing smile. Then why are your hands shaking? He looks down, startled. She's right. His hands tremble at his sides. Why? This is absurd. He has faced far greater threats. Competitors who would do anything to see him fall. Governments that sought to break him. But this is different. You are not special, he snaps. You're just a woman in a habit, living in poverty, clinging to myths because you have nothing else. She exhales as if she expected this. And yet, here you are, in front of me, a man with everything, asking questions he never dared to ask before. His heart stutters. No, this is manipulation. It has to be. I don't ask questions, he says through gritted teeth. I give answers. She steps forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Then answer this, billionaire. If you have everything, why does it feel like you have nothing? A deep, hollow silence follows. He searches for words, for anything to throw back at her. But the room, the flickering candles, the weight in his chest, it all feels unbearable. For the first time, he is drowning in a battle he cannot buy his way out of. His world has always been about control. And now, in front of her, he realizes the truth. He has never been in control at all. The billionaire's breath is unsteady. His entire life has been a relentless pursuit of power, of wealth, of dominance. Yet, in this quiet room, beneath the flickering candlelight, he feels something he has never felt before. Exposed. The nun watches him, her gaze unshaken. She is not afraid of him, not impressed by his riches, not even tempted by the offers he could make to silence her. For the first time, he is the one being measured. You don't understand, he finally says, his voice quieter now. I fought for this. Every dollar, every deal, every empire. I built it from nothing. No one gave me a handout. No one saved me when I was drowning. Her eyes don't waver. And yet you are still drowning. His jaw tightens. I don't need saving. She steps closer, just enough for him to feel the warmth of her presence. Then why do you keep coming here? The words strike like a hammer to his chest. He should leave. Walk out, bury this moment, pretend it never happened. But he doesn't move. Because she is right. Every night he finds himself driving past this place. Every night something inside him refuses to let go. I don't know, he admits. The words taste foreign in his mouth. He is not a man who says I don't know. She exhales as if she's been waiting for this. Maybe, she says gently, it's because deep down you do. The candlelight flickers, casting long shadows against the walls. The billionaire swallows hard. For the first time, he feels something shifting inside him, something breaking, and it terrifies him. The billionaire paces the room, hands clenched at his sides. This isn't who he is. He doesn't break. He doesn't hesitate. Yet here he is, standing in the dim glow of a forgotten chapel, questioning everything he thought was certain. The nun remains still, patient. She does not push, does not demand answers. She simply waits. You think I'm weak, he says, his voice rough. She tilts her head slightly. No. I think you're lost. Lost. The word slams into him with an unbearable weight. You don't understand my world, he snaps. It's not about faith, or hope, or kindness. It's about survival. And yet you survived, she says. So why aren't you at peace? A chill runs down his spine. She doesn't look at him like his rivals do, like an asset or an obstacle. She looks at him as if she sees something buried beneath the power, the arrogance, the walls he has spent years building. You've spent your whole life proving you're strong, she says, that you don't need anyone, that you can control everything. His throat tightens. But what happens, she continues, when you can't? A muscle twitches in his jaw. He wants to argue, to dismiss her words as nonsense. But deep down in the part of himself he never lets anyone see, he knows she's right. There are things in his life he cannot control. No amount of wealth can change the emptiness that lingers when he's alone. No amount of power can silence the question that haunts him. Was it all worth it? And for the first time in his life, he doesn't have an answer. The billionaire lowers himself onto the wooden bench, elbows resting on his knees. His hands tremble, but he clenches them into fists. He won't break. He can't. The nun sits across from him, silent. She doesn't press, doesn't rush. She only watches, calm, steady, like a mirror reflecting something he isn't ready to see. He exhales sharply. You think I regret it, don't you? Her gaze remains unwavering. Do you? A bitter laugh escapes him. I built an empire, created wealth that will last generations. People would kill for what I have. But at what cost? She asks softly. He stiffens. The answer is there, clawing at the back of his mind. Every deal, every betrayal, every sacrifice. He told himself it was necessary, that the world belonged to those willing to take it. But now, as he sits in this quiet room, he wonders, did he take the world or did the world take him? His fingers dig into his palms. I did what I had to do. She leans forward slightly. And yet, you keep coming back. The words settle between them, heavy, unshakable. Something cracks in his chest, a fracture in the armor he has spent years forging. He looks up at her for the first time, truly seeing her, not as a stranger, not as a judge, but as someone who has nothing to gain from his downfall, someone who simply wants him to face the truth. Tell me, his voice barely a whisper, is it too late? The nun's eyes soften. That depends. He swallows hard. On what? She studies him for a long moment before answering. On whether you truly want to change. A lump forms in his throat. For years he had believed that power meant never having to ask that question. Now he isn't so sure. The billionaire stares at the candle's flickering flame. The soft glow casts long shadows against the walls. Walls he feels trapped behind. Change. The word lingers in his mind like an unfamiliar taste on his tongue. Change means letting go. And letting go means losing control. He has never feared power, never feared risk. But this terrifies him. His entire life has been a game of leverage, of taking, of conquering, of bending the world to his will. But what if he can't bend himself? What if I don't know how? He asks, voice hoarse. The nun's expression remains kind but firm. Then you start small, he scoffs. Small won't fix what I've done. No, she agrees, but it's the only way forward. Silence stretches between them. For the first time, he sees a path that cannot be bought, manipulated, or forced. It requires something he has never relied on before, humility. His throat tightens. And if I fail? She smiles gently. Then you try again. He wants to argue, to demand guarantees, but there are none. There is no contract, no loophole, no fine print that ensures redemption. Only a choice. And for the first time in his life, he cannot buy his way out. The billionaire stands at the threshold of the chapel, the cold night air pressing against his back. Inside, the candle's glow flickers, casting faint halos of light against the stone walls. He doesn't belong here, not in a place of quiet, of reflection, of faith. But neither does he belong out there anymore, not in the world he built with steel and fire. His hands clench at his sides. How did it come to this? Decades of decisions, ruthless, calculated, brought him everything he ever wanted. Yet now, as he stands in the stillness, those same decisions feel like chains. each one a weight pressing down on his soul. He inhales deeply. The scent of burning wax and aged wood fills his lungs. It is not the air of boardrooms or penthouses, not the sterile perfection of his curated life. It is real. Behind him, the city hums, the empire he built, the kingdom he once ruled without question. But now it feels distant, as if it no longer belongs to him, or he to it. The nun's voice cuts through the silence. You can carry the weight, or you can set it down. His jaw tightens. Set it down. He has spent his entire life carrying it, wearing his sins like armor. If he lets go what is left of him, his chest rises and falls with a slow, measured breath. The answer terrifies him, because he doesn't know. And for a man who has always known everything, that is the greatest fear of all. The billionaire turns back toward the chapel, his footsteps slow, deliberate. Each step feels heavier than the last. This is not a negotiation, not a deal, not a transaction. This is surrender. The nun watches, patient as ever. She offers no words, no reassurances, only silence. For the first time he realizes how little he understands it. Silence. His world has always been filled with noise, the ringing of phones, the signing of contracts, the applause of victory. But this is different. It is not the silence of loss. It is the silence of something waiting to begin. His hands tremble at his sides. This is the moment. Not when he built his first company. Not when he made his first million. Not when he crushed his last rival. This, the moment when he chooses who he will become. His pulse pounds, the weight on his shoulders threatens to pull him back. But then, he takes a step forward, and another. The doors close behind him, shutting out the city, the empire, the life he knew. For the first time, he walks into the unknown, with nothing but himself. The billionaire steps into the chapel's dim light, the hush wrapping around him like a cocoon. The doors behind him remain shut, sealing off the world he once controlled. For the first time, he is truly alone, with himself, with his past, and with the choices that brought him here. The wooden bench creaks as he sits, his hands clasped together. They are the same hands that signed billion-dollar deals, crushed competitors, and built an empire. But now they shake, not from age, not from weakness, but from something deeper. Doubt, a lifetime of certainty, power, and control. Yet here none of it matters. The nun sits beside him, silent. She does not preach. She does not judge. She waits. Finally, he speaks, his voice low. I've spent my life building something great. But at what cost? The question lingers. He knows the answer. It cost him everything. Relationships, love, peace, each one sacrificed at the altar of success. He once believed power would be enough, that wealth could fill the emptiness inside. It didn't. The nun looks at him, her gaze calm. And now, he exhales, the weight in his chest pressing heavier than ever. I don't know. And that, more than anything, is the truth. He doesn't know what comes next. He only knows what he cannot return to. The life of power, of control, of endless ambition. It gave him everything. But in the end, it left him with nothing that mattered. Silence stretches between them. Outside, the world moves on, indifferent to his transformation. He is just one man, one story among millions. But to him, this moment means everything, because for the first time in his life, he has a choice that is not about winning. He looks at the cross before him, not as a man seeking forgiveness, not as a businessman searching for an edge, but as a human being stripped of pretense. I don't know how to start over. His voice is barely a whisper. The nun smiles, not with pity, but with understanding. No one does. And that is the lesson. Life is not about always knowing the way. It is about choosing to walk forward, even when the path is unclear. For decades, he defined himself by power, by wealth, by success. Now he faces a new challenge, defining himself by something greater, not money, not control, but purpose. Slowly he rises. His past will always be a part of him, but it no longer owns him. He doesn't need to have all the answers. He only needs the courage to begin again. And as he steps back into the world for the first time in his life, he is truly free.